This is a very, very difficult question. This is the kind of thing that you should skip if you're having even the least bit of trouble, and make sure you move on to other stuff. There's easier stuff coming that you really want to lock in. When you get to this hard section of the test, just do the best you can and skip around as needed. Don't worry about answering every question. If something looks too hard for you, then skip it. Try to look for things where you can use the strategies. Here I might be like, okay, well, I've got a bunch of equations. Maybe I could find a point to plug into them. But there's not really the same kind of points for this question as there were for the previous one, number 25, because these values of F, P, and C are not in this chart. This chart is telling us how many calories and kilojoules we get from each gram of protein. But in this case, we don't know how many grams of protein we have. It's a unknown. So the way that I think is most efficient is to just kind of follow the instructions of the question and build an equation that kind of matches the story. So let's see what would happen. If we did that, we would see that, okay, 180 food calories in a granola bar come entirely from P grams of protein, F grams of fat, and C grams of carbohydrates. So what most people do is they write something like this: 180 equals P plus F plus C. But we can see right away that that's not really going to be right, because then where do all these other numbers come from, like 4/9 and everything like that? That's something, we need that somehow. So even if we tried to rearrange this and solve for F, we wouldn't get any of these answer choices. Now, it's not a coincidence that if we look at the chart, look, 4 and 9 are pretty big, important numbers in the chart, and food calories is what we're talking about. So this part of the chart here, kilojoules, doesn't matter. So what we need to realize, which is very difficult, I think, is that when we are talking about P, F, and C, those are the grams of each of those things. And the chart is telling us that this is the amount of energy per gram. So in math, the way that we kind of represent that situation of like a rate is we're going to multiply. So this is the incorrect equation. What we should do instead is we should factor in the values for each of these. So protein is 4 calories per gram, so that would be 4P. Fat is 9, and carbohydrates is 4. So you can see, we're clearly not there yet, but we're starting to to see the right numbers in the right places. So my goal here is to solve for F. So how would I do that? Okay, well, I would get F by itself. So let's subtract, let's just zoom in on this. Let's subtract the 4s from both sides of each of these. P and C. So I'm going to get something like 180 minus 4P minus 4C is equal to 9F. And then I'm going to divide by 9. So let's get F by itself totally. And you can see that with these answer choices, it's not neat enough yet. We're going to need to deal with this fraction somehow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to distribute that 9 to all 3 parts here. So 180 divided by 9 is 20. 4 divided by 9 I can't really do, so I'm just going to leave it as 4/9 P and 4/9 C. And you can see we're getting kind of close, right? Now, this is where people have trouble, is we need to kind of still get that 4/9 away from those 2 parts. And the way to do it is through factoring. But because of these negatives, it's gonna be really a pain. So basically, we're not just dividing out 4/9. We're dividing out negative 4/9. And so if we do that from the first piece, that leaves the P behind, and then if we do it from the second piece, it's going to leave a plus C behind, and that's equal to our F. So if you had trouble following that, then just I would say, remember what factoring is, right? Factoring is us reversing distribution. So if we factor and we want to make sure that we factored correctly, we can just distribute back in and see, right? So if I distributed this negative 4/9 into both these parts, right, I would be back where I started. Negative 4/9 P, check, minus 4/9 C. And so that's how we verify that that's okay. So is that an answer? So I kind of reversed it. F equals 20 minus 4/9 times p plus c. Choice B. And that's the answer. Okay, so that's probably what the book would tell you to do, what the SAT would tell you to do, and I do think that honestly that is the most understandable way to do it. That's very difficult though. I think, this is why this is, in my opinion, one of the hardest ones on this test. I'm going to show you one other way. And I don't think that for most of you this is going to be that helpful, but I think it's worth watching because this is something that I think is not so bad because I'm very, very good at arithmetizing. Now, what is that strategy? Basically, when we have a situation that's kind of abstract and is confusing us, our instinct should be, can I make it less abstract? Can I use real numbers instead of variables to better understand the situation? So that's the nature of arithmetize, and normally pick numbers like zeros and ones to kind of test out equations and stuff like that. But the story here is very specific, and so we have to make sure we're following the rules of the story when we pick our numbers. So the main rule is that I must have a granola bar that has a total of 180 calories. So what I might do is then say, well, what's an easy way to get 180, right? What if I got all of my calories from just one of these three things, right? Obviously, no granola bar is pure protein, pure fat, or pure carbohydrates. But when I arithmetize, I'm not interested in reality. I'm interested in testing something that's going to help me at least sort through these answer choices. So when I look at these answer choices, I kind of think, well, what's changing, right? Like, it seems to me that C is the thing that's kind of changing the most from choice to choice, right? It's positive in some, it's negative in others, but because of the pluses and the minuses before the 4/9, it's also going to be shifting that way. So I might just be like, okay, let's try the C and see what happens, right? What if my granola bar was 100% carbs? Carbs. What would that mean? Well, in order for it to be 180 calories, it would need to be 4 times the total number of carbohydrate calories, right? Because it's 4 calories per gram of carbohydrates. So I would need to say, okay, how many grams of carbohydrates would that take? So I would basically just divide the 180 by 4 and discover that 45 grams of carbohydrates are going to do the job. And remember, when we pick that number, the amount of protein is 0 and the amount of fat is 0. So this is kind of my arithmetized situation. And now I go to the choices and I'd say, okay, well, what's going to fit with that? So it's annoying, but thankfully we have a calculator. So if I did P is 0, what that's going to mean is at first all of my P's kind of cancel out. So, right, all of these are really going to be 20 plus, in this case, 4/9 of 45. 20 minus 4/9 of 45. 20 minus 4/9 of negative 45, right? 0 minus 45 in that case. And 20 plus 9/4 of 45. And remember, all of these need to equal 0. That's my goal. Because fat's 0. So, all right, well, 4/9 times 45 is 20. So I can start to see I've got some problems, right? So for choice A, I'm running out of space here. This is going to be 20 plus 20 is equal to 0. No good. For this, it's going to be 20 minus 20 equals 0. Check, that works. For C, it's going to be 20 plus 20, because the double negative is equal to 0. We just said that doesn't work. And then I know that 9/4 of 45 isn't going to work, but I'm going to do it anyway. That makes this 20 plus 101.25 equals 0, which doesn't work. So I've gotten down to one answer choice by kind of like a miracle of the strategy. That's okay. I mean, look, if this was confusing to you, I totally understand. This is like me pushing the limits of the arithmetized strategy. If you practice with it, you're gonna get better and better at using it in these kind of crazy situations. But I do not recommend, diving into this kind of thing. And this is why, for some of the easier questions where I totally acknowledge that there are algebraic ways to solve these questions that are easier, I still recommend that you really think through some of the arithmetize methods. Because if you can get better and better at doing it on the easy stuff, then you'll strengthen that skill. And you'll be able to use that tool for the harder stuff where it really could save you points that you would not be able to get otherwise. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. I hope that helps. I really like that arithmetize is that versatile. And it could save us on something really, really tricky, but we got to be clever. And if not, then at least we got to be good at algebra. And either way, these are well-earned points. It's a very difficult question.